Welcome back to Module 3, Curriculum Connections. Our first module looked at the basics of morphology and hopefully gave you a bit of content knowledge to help you understand how our English words are built. In the second module, we took a bit of a trip into the history of the English language and learned why we have so many different morphemes and thus seemingly complicated spellings. In this third module, we're going to dig into the new 2023 Ontario curriculum and look at all the ways that morphology can be linked in the curriculum, as well as when we should be teaching certain morphemes to students. As noted in this quote by Marcia K. Kendry, morphology can and should be attended to even in the early years of school. Have you ever heard a younger child mix up their tenses? They may say something like, I wented to the park, or I goed to Nana and Papa's house yesterday. This is evidence that children, even as young as 2 years old, are beginning to develop an oral understanding of syntax and the beginning building blocks of morphology. This ability to begin to understand basic morphemes early in their school career is reflected in the new 2023 Ontario language curriculum. In the B2 foundation strand, we find specific expectations for word level reading and spelling using morphological knowledge. The specific expectation, which is labeled B2.6 in grade 1, B2.3 in grades 2 and grades 3, and expectation B2.1 in grades 4 and above, speak to the teaching and learning that should be occurring at every grade level according to the new curriculum. What's important to note, however, like all other specific expectations in the B2 strand, is that there is a built-out appendices that gives more detail to the specific morphemes that students need to know each year from grades K1 to grade 4. The information outlined in the accompanying continuum for B2 gives a very detailed and specific scope and sequence for teaching morphemes in kindergarten grade 1 to grade 4. You'll notice that in the kindergarten grade 1 column, much of the learning is done orally. After grade 4, there is no specific scope and sequence for what morphemes to teach and when. The morphemes outlined in this detailed continuum encompass many of the most popular morphemes that students will see and use in their everyday reading and writing. After grade 4, morphological study can be built around content area vocabulary and morphemes that come up in the increasingly complex reading and writing that students will be doing in the junior and intermediate grades. Morphological knowledge pops up as well when we think about how we teach words with irregularities to students. These words, sometimes called irregular words, sight words, or heart words, can be better understood with morphological understanding. Many of these words with irregularities can be at least partially decoded by using our understanding of phonological, orthographic, and/or morphological knowledge. For example, pairing the morphological understanding that the ED morpheme means that something happened in the past can help students read and spell the word walked, even though the ED morpheme spells the t sound at the end of the word walked. The importance of morphological knowledge also pops up in the specific vocabulary strand, which is labeled expectation B2.7, 2.4, and 2.2 respectively. Students need to use their morphological knowledge to analyze and understand new words in context. When you dig into the specifics in the continuum, you will see that students use their knowledge of morphology to help understand and build their vocabulary. We know that morphology, just like phonemic awareness or phonics, needs to be taught systematically and explicitly. The B2 continuum gives a scope and sequence for grades kindergarten grade 1 to grade 4. So don't forget to use that to help you with your planning and classroom instruction. As previously mentioned, beyond grade 4, there is no specific scope and sequence for what morphemes to teach and when. The morphemes outlined in this detailed continuum encompass many of the most popular morphemes that students will see and use in their everyday reading and writing. But after grade 4, additional morphemes can be taught in upper grades as words become more complex across various subject areas. When teaching morphology, we want to make sure that students learn the morphemes and understand three main parts: the correct spelling, the meaning of the morpheme, and the pronunciation. It is especially important for students to understand how to properly pronounce the morphemes when they come across them in a word. We've already talked about the morpheme ed and why it is important for students to understand that even though the ed suffix can sound like a t, d, or id, its spelling stays consistent as ed. Let me give you another example with the suffix able. The suffix able is spelled able. Generally speaking, it usually means capable of or fit for. And when added to a base, it creates an adjective. However, we don't pronounce it able like we do with the actual word able, as in, are you able to go to the movies? With the suffix able, we actually pronounce it able, with that sneaky schwa popping out. Students having this understanding of the pronunciation shift will help them read the word not as read able, for example, but correctly as readable. When it comes to assessing morphological knowledge and whether students have consolidated the learning, this can be done both formally and informally. Informally, students' writing can give us a very clear picture of their understanding of morphemes and morphology. Are they being used in their writing? And if so, are they being spelled properly and used correctly? More formally, assessments like oral reading fluency passages or thought-out morphology check-ins can show if students have fluidity and comfort with the morphemes that they have been explicitly taught in the classroom. In this module, we looked at the 2023 language curriculum and dug into the overall and specific expectations related to morphology. Whether following the K1 Grade 4 scope and sequence outlined in the B2 curriculum continuum, or when building morphological understanding beyond grade 4, what remains consistent is that teaching should be carefully planned, systematic, and explicit. Finally, it is important to remember that it is not enough for students to be able to identify and peel off the morphemes to be able to decode the word. To have a true, deep morphological understanding, students must also understand the deep tapestry of meaning that is attached to every morpheme. This understanding will have a huge impact not only on their ability to read and write the words, but also on the overall comprehension of what they're reading. To help punctuate this point, join me for Module 4, where we dig into the reason why simply being able to decode a word using phonemic awareness and phonics is not enough and why morphology matters.